everyone, and welcome to today's crash course. Do you find heredity, DNA, chromosomes, and genes kind of all get mixed up and the words don't really make sense? Are you studying for a test? Do you need to review the material a little bit more? Well, today's crash course material is mostly intended for secondary 1 and 2 students. But if you're in Sec 3 or 4, stick around and you can review some of the concepts with me. You might remember that all living things are made of cells. And most animal and plant cells contain a nucleus. And the nucleus is really cool because it has two primary functions, two big roles in the cell. The first is to control the cell's functions, and the second is that it contains hereditary information. So what is hereditary information? Well, it's genetic characteristics that are passed down from parents to offspring. And just so you know, offspring is another word for children. So some of the hereditary characteristics that we can get from our parents are eye color and skin color, and also things like acne and color blindness. So some are more physical that we see with our eyes, and others are more internal characteristics. Which of the following is a hereditary characteristic? Is it A, large biceps, B, cheek dimples, C, a favorite movie, or D, hair length? The answer is B, cheek dimples. So things like muscle shape and hair length and your personal choice in movie, those are things that can change over time in a person's life. However, cheek dimples are a trait that is programmed by your DNA to last forever. So how exactly is hereditary information stored in the nucleus? Well, the nucleus contains what we call deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. It's a molecule that carries hereditary information. And what's cool about DNA is that it looks like a ladder that's twisted, and we call it a double helix. And so you see that the ladder parts are joined together by pieces, like puzzle pieces, and those are called nucleotides. And they're the building blocks of DNA molecules. And the combination of those nucleotides are what make you you, what make you unique. So the specific order of the nucleotides makes up your genetic code. So let's recap what we know so far. We know that DNA molecules are inside the nucleus. We know that each DNA molecule contains a sequence of nucleotides, and that the order of those nucleotides is the genetic code that makes you you. And what we do when we call that all that DNA that are in an organism, we call it a genetic makeup. And so what's cool about that is my genetic makeup, what my DNA makes me who I am, and your genetic makeup is what makes you who you are, uniquely you. How many DNA molecules are in a human cell? Is it A, 1 million, B, 1,000, C, 100, or D, 46? The answer is D, 46. Okay, so I kind of know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, wait, only 46 DNA molecules to control and contain all of my genetic information? Well, it's true. And actually, what's really cool about DNA is that each strand you can actually pull apart, and it's approximately 2 meters long. So together, the 46 molecules, they contain approximately 3 billion nucleotides, which means all of those combinations are infinite. So it's actually quite extraordinary. Our DNA is pretty rad. So now you're probably thinking, okay, I've got 2 meters of DNA. How is it going to fit into a teeny tiny nucleus that's not even visible to the naked eye? Well, it's actually even cooler because that DNA can be wrapped and bent and compacted to a point where it can fit into the nucleus. So all 46 molecules will fit into the nucleus because we have what's called chromatin, which is the DNA molecule wrapped into a more compact form. For the purpose of cell division, each chromatin condenses and thickens and becomes this rod that's called a chromosome. And chromosomes are usually a lot more well organized within a cell, so it makes cell division a little bit easier. So a chromosome is a folded DNA molecule coiled into the most compact form during cell division. So there are usually 46 chromosomes in a healthy human cell. However, some genetic anomalies happen where there's disorders, and those can create some problems with whether there's too many chromosomes or not enough chromosomes or a chromosome that's missing a part of it. The other thing that's really cool, if we look at a chromosome under a microscope, is that chromosomes usually are in their X forms, but only during certain types of cell division, at specific times during cell division. Otherwise, they are usually in long rods. So chromosomes are usually described in pairs. And so a human cell will have 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 pairs, and then one pair at the end that's actually the sex chromosome. And so usually we'll have in a healthy human cell, you will have one half of a chromosomal pair that comes from the dad and one half of a chromosomal pair that's coming from the mom. And then if we look at chromosomal pair number 2, one comes from the dad, one comes from the mom. And so that goes on for 22 pairs. And then at the end, at the 23rd pair, that is your sex chromosome. So if we have 2 X's, like you see here, it is a female. And if you have an X and Y chromosome, that means that the sex is male. And a total, as you guys can see, 23 pairs, 23 times 2, that's 46 chromosomes. Which human cells contain less than 23 pairs of chromosomes? Is it A, reproductive cells or gametes? B, brain cells? C, skin cells? Or D, bone cells? The answer is A, reproductive cells or gametes. So gametes are reproductive cells. We have the ova in females and the spermatozoa in males. And each gamete contains 23 chromosomes. So during sexual reproduction, the sperm and the ova will fertilize, will come together, and 23 chromosomes from the male will combine with 23 chromosomes from the female. They're going to mix up together, and you'll get 46 chromosomes of a new human being. And that is what's cool about sexual reproduction, is that because you're getting 23 chromosomes from the dad and 23 chromosomes from the mom, you're increasing that genetic diversity by creating this brand new person. So now let's talk about genes. Genes are specific segments along the DNA that are responsible for certain hereditary information. And what's important to recognize about genes is they're kind of like recipes. They're different codes responsible for different single gene characteristics. So for example, I have a recipe for creating freckles, or a recipe for your eye color, or a recipe for your earlobe shape. But there's also some genetic or genes, I guess you could say, or genetic mutations. And those are mistakes in the genetic code that cause illnesses such as Huntington's disease or cystic fibrosis. So that can also happen in the human body. The other thing to remember is that there can be multiple genes responsible for one hereditary trait. And in the human body, we have about 20,000 genes responsible for who we are and what makes us unique. So here's an analogy that'll help summarize everything that we learned today. Think of all the DNA in a cell as a text. And that text is broken up into paragraphs, and those paragraphs represent the chromosomes. So there are 46 paragraphs in that text. And in that text, we have words. In those paragraphs, we also have words. And those are our genes. Those words, they have different meanings. They have different jobs in that paragraph. And then those words are made up of letters. And the letters are our nucleotides. And we can move those letters around, switch them any way which way we want to, and we can create new words, new combinations. And that is also representative of our genetic diversity, because we can move those nucleotides along and make new genes and create different characteristic traits that make each one of us uniquely us. So there you have it. That is your first crash course on genetics. So I hope that you keep practicing. See you next time.